Welcome in and welcome back. We are here for another Popcorn Weekly movie news. We have six things to cover, and then a new feature that I'm going to be adding to the repertoire here on a weekly basis that I think is going to be provide at least fun conversation. So the number one thing, WB is dropping over $30 million to complete the fabled Snyder cut of Justice League for HBO Max. This is an interesting card to play. It is interesting because it seems it may be transformative for the streaming wars. Why is that? So, you're Warner Brothers or you're Disney, and not only do you make movies, but you also have a streaming service that you want to sell. So, you're already shooting an entire movie. An extended cut of a movie, normally you have enough scenes shot for that anyway. You've deleted scenes from Avengers Endgame, for example. You deleted scenes from Wonder Woman. So, instead of simply including them as cut scenes on a DVD release, as an extended feature, spend the money, finish the scenes, put them in. All of a sudden, your streaming service does not have Wonder Woman plus deleted scenes. It has Wonder Woman extended cut. It has an entirely different movie. So you're making two movies, one go, one for public release, one for your private streaming service. This will be a boon for movie enthusiasts. This will be a boon for people who are extreme fans of a certain property, for extreme Marvel fans, for extreme DC fans. You're probably, at that point, a member of HBO Max anyway. You're probably, at that point, subscribed to Disney Plus anyway. You're getting an entirely new property. You're getting an entirely new property for the service that you were already paying. A question that it raises is that it blurs the line between, for a director, what am I cutting because it should not make a theatrical release because it is the fat on the steak, and what will be cut simply because, you're going to hear about that extra scene with the Hulk, and you're going to want to see it. And if you want to see it, and Disney gets a lot of feedback that, you know what, I subscribed to Disney Plus because of that extra scene with the Hulk, well, then my name gets touted around, gets thrown around a little bit. I get an extra feather in my cap. Mightn't I, as a director, release a movie that's good enough to be a billion-dollar film, but there was an extra little sauce on the side, and we're just going to put it on Disney Plus? Will it incentivize basically something that has plagued the gaming community, releasing, downloadable content? I can't remember the exact phrase for it. Will it incentivize releasing an unfinished product? I don't know, but it is interesting to see something like this go through. The second thing to talk about, Timothy Olyphant is joining the cast of The Mandalorian. This is a cast of The Mandalorian that is reprising all of the key actors from Season 1 and adding to that not only Timothy Olyphant, but Rosario Dawson, Michael Biehn, Sasha Banks, and Katie Sackhoff in front of the camera, and Robert Rodriguez and Peyton Reed behind the camera. This is a coup of talent returning and being added to what was a cultural phenomenon first season for The Mandalorian. And it seems every week that goes past, you hear about one or two more names added to this list. It will be, and apparently rumored, Jamie Lee Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis has apparently been spotted on set. It would be interesting to see her just catch some role, some small. There were a lot of small roles in season 1 of The Mandalorian that went unheralded, but were cameos by extremely talented actors. And it seems season 2 is going to continue that and expand the Star Wars universe greatly. This is one of the things that I've been wondering about season 2. Are they going to use it, especially as we learned that Rosario Dawson will be playing a character that was already in the Star Wars universe. Katie Sackhoff is playing a character that is already in the Star Wars universe. Timothy Olyphant will be playing a character that is in the Star Wars universe but has never appeared in film, much like Rosario Dawson's character. But also, I lost my train of thought. But anyway, we are expanding the universe, not simply building up the characters that have already been there. And that is like IG-11, right? Adding IG-11, adding Baby Yoda, adding the Mandalorian to this rich universe, which is expanding the properties and expanding the storytelling opportunities. So, for example, when you look, who wouldn't want to see a series on IG-11? If there were going to be a 3-part miniseries on IG-11, who would tune into that? Obviously, it would have to be a prequel, spoilers, but who's missing that? Who's going to avoid tuning into that? So every time that you add another character to that, you add potential storylines, you add potential, let's be honest, in the business sense, potential revenue streams. So it is exciting to see that carrying through to season 2. The third thing, Henry Cavill is going to return to the DCEU as Superman. But it's not in Man of Steel 2. There's not a lot of information around this at this point, but it does raise some questions. Namely, for me, are they going to attempt to salvage the existing DCEU? It looked for a while like they were going to go ahead and sort of fracture that off. You've got the Aquaman movie, which was a success. You've got the Wonder Woman movie that was a success. It looked for a while that they were just going to fracture that off and have characters basically existing in their own universes, at least for a little while. But when you're promising to bring back Henry Cavill as Superman, the only reason you need to necessarily do that is if you're keeping the same entire universe. Are you introducing Crisis on Multiple Earths? Are you introducing that? Or are you introducing some other idea by which Superman might not graduate, but sort of hand off the duties of Superman to some other character? Are you going to retire the Superman character within your universe? The Superman character poses many problems on a universe scale when you're looking at films. Only because he's as fast as the Flash and more powerful than any other character. So if one of these characters is having a hard time, shouldn't he use a cell phone and call up old Supes? This has been the problem with Superman films in general. It's very difficult to make a compelling Superman film when you know the guy's not going to die. But when he might die, but one thing has to happen. One little green rock has to be introduced. And if it is, then we've got problems. But then you're always looking for that MacGuffin. You're always avoiding that one thing. So it is interesting. It is compelling. It's confusing. I'll use that word. It is confusing to me that they're bringing back Henry Cavill. Does this mean that we will be seeing the return of the Batfleck? Will we? I don't know. The next thing to talk about, the Scorsese, De Niro, and DiCaprio film, Killers of the Flower Moon, is going to be financed through Apple, distributed by Paramount, and then rights exclusive to Apple TV. Apple TV is making many legacy inroads they've got the Tom Hanks movie, now they're doing Scorsese. They do not seem to be building much momentum. Where will the wins come for the Apple TV app? Is it an app? I don't even know. I have no idea. This is one of the problems. I don't know if... I think that they have very poor marketing on this subject, and I think that is why they're having to use so many legacy big-name things, right? And you could argue that, yes, Disney is doing that too with Marvel titles and with Star Wars titles. Disney Plus is going with lesser-known characters. They completely invented the character of the Mandalorian. So you've got you've got the Winter Soldier and Falcon, which have never been headliners, headlining their own show. Apple is... So since Apple does not have that stable of characters, that stable of IP, they're having to create it. But they're not doing it in the same way that Netflix did it. Netflix did it by creating IPs that had potential to grow. That's not how Apple is doing things. They're buying individual properties that you will have to go to their platform to see. And it's confusing because Apple has billions and billions of dollars. So if you're Apple, why wouldn't you move to create, and maybe they are, and I just don't know about them. Why wouldn't you move to create narrative stories in serial form to which people will flock? It seems confusing, and I'm not sure why they're making those moves. The next thing is that Labyrinth 2 is coming, and it's coming from Scott Derrickson. Scott Derrickson, hot off of the heels of parting ways with Marvel for Doctor Strange 2. This is certainly a property at which Scott Derrickson could excel, but I felt the same thing about Doctor Strange. Maybe he was hamstrung. Maybe he was handcuffed. I don't know. But that movie was, to me, underwhelming. There were some nice scenes. I really enjoyed the ending. But between the two goalposts there wasn't a whole lot. And you've got Benefit Lumberjack starring as Dr. Stephen Strange. That could have really, if he had gone out on a limb, pardon the cliches, if he had gone out on a limb, he could have really done something with that character. The character in the comic books is extremely interesting. The character on film, as he was presented by Benefit Lumberjack, was rather dull. So I don't know what direction Labyrinth 2 is going to be going, if it is a straight sequel, if it is a soft reboot of sorts. But you've got a guy who is definitely capable of bringing up the rear as long as he stays focused on his project. Maybe as long as he is not hamstrung by the studio itself. But that movie, Doctor Strange, left a lot to be desired. And if a movie like The Labyrinth leaves a lot to be desired, there will be madness from the fans. And the last story to talk about here is Indiana Jones 5 is coming, and it's coming from an interesting source, James Mangold. Mangold? I'm not sure. The notable thing about this is that James Mangold is the same director that brought you Logan. So, that could be pretty great. Imagine an Indiana Jones film with a 77-year-old Harrison Ford on the palette, painted with the palette of paints that brought us Logan. Number one, that could set you up for an entirely new franchise, including whatever character might be in that X-23 role, if something like that is in the cards. But also that tone, that Western-type tone, where from scene one, you know it's not going to end great. You know, if we get that from Harrison Ford in the role of Indiana Jones, as opposed to the way it was presented in the Star Wars series, it could really his death was thrown away in Star Wars. Is this perhaps Disney trying to make that up to him? It's hard to say. But if this is the Logan of the Indiana Jones franchise, it could really, ironically, reinvigorate things. The new segment I'm going to be adding on here is looking at some older movies. On May 7th, 2010, Iron Man 2 came to theaters. On May 14th, 2010, Robin Hood, starring Russell Crowe, hit the theaters. These movies are 10 years old. Does it feel to you? I remember being in the theater for both of these movies. The Iron Man 2 experience was awful because the guy next to me smelled like vodka and wouldn't shut the fuck up. So it is interesting to me knowing that's a 10-year-old memory. Those movies are 10 years old. But here's the interesting thing to me. These movies feel much newer than the pair of movies I'm about to give you. Star Wars Revenge of the Sith hit theaters May 19th, 2005. Madagascar hit theaters May 27th, 2005. I didn't see Madagascar in theaters, but I remember the stand-ups. I remember the advertisements in the theaters when I went to see, for example, Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. Those movies, to me, feel much older than do the movies that are 10 years old. I'm interested to know if it is that way for you, but also, hitting theaters May 5th of 2000, Gladiator, starring Russell Crowe, and May 10th of 2000 was Battlefield Earth, R.I.P. John Travolta. So when you think back, 10 years versus 20 years, Gladiator, the promising budding career of one Russell Crowe. 2, Robin Hood in 2010. During that time, Russell Crowe, if I'm remembering correctly, was in a bit of a lull. Didn't seem like there was a whole lot coming from the guy. But when you think back how young Russell Crowe seemed in Gladiator versus how old he seemed in Robin Hood. And then you've got the new Russell Crowe movie coming out. I can't remember what it's called right now. But how old he definitely is in that film. But those movies are 20 years old, and I thought that would be an interesting little thing to throw on to the end of these Popcorn Weekly movie news segments. But let me know in the comments below if you saw any of those 6 films in the theater and how you felt about them, how you felt about seeing them at the time.